From high atop the city of Philadelphia on the 52nd floor of the BNY Mellon Bank Center and the Content Club studio in the Pyramid Club of Philadelphia, this is Storytelling with a Purpose. I'm your host, Jim DeLorenzo, the principal of Jim DeLorenzo Public Relations, and through this show, I want to illustrate how storytelling with a purpose is integral to my lifelong vocation, storytelling in public relations, with conversations that highlight best practices, tactics, and strategies behind the process, how storytelling works in a professional setting, what goes into it, and how it can move the listener, the viewer, or the reader to some action. Today we will be looking at some ways of storytelling when you're starting a business. You're just starting the business, the stories that we craft to launch the business, attract investors, interest team members, and to go to market. My guest today is Jon Zeit, the co-founder of VNYLab, a new business that will be officially launching in 2024 after over 2 years of development. VNYLab originated from a love of music and a general disdain for how the music industry operates. The VNYLab team believes that with blockchain technology, they can change how musicians are paid and create a more fair system for both musicians and their fans. So thank you, Jon, for taking the time to come to Philadelphia today and be my guest. We've been talking, you and I first met in New York City about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And we started talking via Zoom and phone over the last year or so. We've had conversations at least 2 or 3 times a month over the last year. And I'm very impressed by your style, your story, and by the fact that now some of the things that we've been talking about for over a year now are falling into place.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Thanks for having me. And, I think that we started this relationship over the stories we shared that night.
yes.
And, here we are.
Here we
talking about
are.
Storytelling.
And again, storytelling is such a big part of what we do, and I don't think people understand fully how much the role storytelling plays in business. And for you, when you start telling me the story about why you got into this, why you started this business, and how you're attracting people, that's what makes a great story for me, and I like to share that with everybody today. When you first had the idea for VNYLab, the company that is now going to be coming out, VNYLab, what was the impetus for you? What was the moment where you said, this is something that needs to be done?
So it happened over a long period of time with the 2 other founding partners, Wes Mason and Nikki Fernandez. I had been talking about how blockchain could be used in the music industry. And before I had met Nikki, our CEO, Wes, had met her, and she was talking about how blockchain could impact the music industry. And at this point, it wasn't really a formed plan yet. He called and said, hey, you guys got to connect. You're talking about the same thing. Just please connect for me.
Yeah.
So over the course of the next few months, we realized that each of us had a different piece of the puzzle figured out. And then in early 2021, we decided, hey, there's actually a business here. Let's try to do this. And then we've spent the next, subsequent 3 years planning and strategizing and getting all the pieces in place in order to launch this year.
And again, you're starting a business, you're bringing people together. What were some of the stories that you told to attract Wes Mason, to attract Nikki Fernandez, to get people who understood what you were telling them and wanted to be part of it? What was one of the first stories you might have told people about why you felt, and again, this might go back to why blockchain?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people look at blockchain with a negative perspective. Or
Sure. And I don't think any of the stories had to do with the technology. The stories that we told each other that attracted us to each other were around our lives, how we lived them, how we view relationships with people. And all 3 of us we're relationship people. When I'm with somebody, I'm with somebody.
Yeah.
And that's how Wes is, that's how Nikki is. So there was a long kind of courting period of exchanging stories from our past so we could each evaluate like what are our main what do I want to call it?
Common interests.
Yeah, common interests and do our values align, right? And so once we realized that from the stories we were telling each other that our values align, that's when we decided to actually go into business together.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. And when we started talking last year, one of the things that was on my mind, and I know I expressed this to you, is the telling positive stories of how blockchain can work, even in light of, say, something like the crypto market and things that were happening in cryptocurrencies, and when we first started talking. So
Mhm.
one of the things that caught my attention was the fact that I know nothing about blockchain. I know
Right.
nothing about crypto. All I've been hearing were horrible stories. But the way you were expressing what you hoped to do with VNYLab was something that sounded to me very positive and very fulfilling as far as the promise of blockchain technology. So if you could, um, why do you think blockchain is the right path to take for this project?
Well, I think when you're representing ownership of something, the need for intermediaries is less and less as technology evolves, and really blockchain is just a chain of custody. Um, so when you see a lot of the negative stories about blockchain, that's not about blockchain. That's about the people who are utilizing a technology to represent something that isn't real or
Okay.
isn't tangible. And that's where we haven't really had to have any discord about using blockchain in any type of way with our business because we're not making something up for it to represent.
Right.
Yeah.
You're not creating something out of whole cloth
Yeah.
that's going to be in the ether, and it's not tangible.
Well, and our entire business is about giving artists and fans a new way to connect and to create and monetize music. Um, Blockchain just happens to be a piece of the technology that we're using for this. It's not the focal point, right?
Okay.
It's not like something we're going to go put on an exchange. So,
Now, Wes Mason, one of your partners, is a very successful businessman and has started a number of different companies and businesses. Nikki Fernandez is very successful in the music industry
yeah.
as a songwriter and as a performer. And you come to it with the experience in blockchain, but also the experience as a professional musician, touring musician.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get started as a touring musician?
Well, I've played music since I was a kid, and always knew I wanted to play live music. I did my first live show when I was 16,
Okay.
and I got recruited to play in a band. And from that point on, I fell in love with it. So just everything I would do would be focused on how do I take that to the next level. Over the time, I got to realize my version of success in music, which was getting to tour globally and not have to pay for it. I didn't make anything, but we had some really good times. Um,
And what type of music? I recall there was some punk, there was some rock.
yeah.
Or was that basically the sweet spot for you?
Yeah, that was a sweet spot for touring. But Nikki and I also write together, and that's more of just pop music with country influence and jazz influences as well. So
Okay.
I'm a lover of all types of music, but in that rock and roll and punk rock genre, that's where I've toured the most.
Okay. So you come together with Wes and with Nikki, and you have this idea for a way to build uh, a company that will help musicians and performers basically make more money from what they're doing than if they were working with a larger industry recording industry company.
So I think that you can do both.
Yeah.
What we aim to do is connect artists and fans in the creation process. So our programs are going to include the fans in the creation of new songs and new albums where they'll actually get a say and they'll get to feel heard, and they'll also get to see and hear the stories behind the works that the artists are creating. rather than just waiting until the story's been told through the studio and released on
Sure, sure.
radio.
And it's a more direct connection
Yeah.
between the musicians and their fans. It's a greater way of doing fan engagement, which has been a big buzzword in the sports industry, but we really haven't talked about it in the entertainment industry as much.
Right, right. Well, and I think that there's the next level of relationship that can be formed. Um, with fan engagement being the buzzword now, it's because fans of sports, of music, of any kind of entertainment are starting to really realize, what I'm feeling pretty over monetized right now because all the fan engagement programs, they're another way to sell me something.
Sure,
Yeah, and I think
sure.
we all feel that, even the people that work in the industry.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, we want to go to this experience, and then they're going to upsell me on X, Y, and Z. What we aim to do is give something back through these experiences, and that's where blockchain comes in to say, okay, you helped with guiding the creation of this new intellectual property. You should be able to benefit off of that too.
That's a great idea. And we joked about this before the conversation. This conversation, we talked about an experience that I had customer service wise and the upsell. And I think that's always a big uh, stumbling block for people is that you're, you're pay, say you're going to a concert, you pay the base price to go into the concert. Then you're paying uh, the surcharges for either the ticketing company or the arena and the taxes. And then you get into the show and then you're buying concessions, you're buying T-shirts, you're buying CDs or whatever, and then you go and sit in a seat and you watch it and you see the performance, and then there's the opportunity to go backstage. If you want to go backstage, it's this much. If you want to get an autograph, it's this much. If you want to get your picture taken with the performer and then get that autograph, it's another. Each thing is another upsell,
Right.
and it kind of devalues that base performance part.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think that there's a lot of misplaced judgment on it too, because you have a lot of these upsells or like the surcharges you say,
Yeah.
right? Who does that affect? Well, it's going to affect the artists that you're going to see because you're not going to really put the thought into it as you're excited buying the concert tickets of, oh wait, maybe it's these people or these
Yeah.
people that are adding these surcharges. So if I choose not to go see my favorite artist next time because I got charged 40% on my tickets, then it's affecting the artist.
Sure,
So.
because that's part of their revenue stream.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, they don't necessarily have, we saw this with Pearl Jam 30 years ago, and we saw this with Taylor Swift in the last 2 years, where they balk at, I'm not going to deal with these companies that are going to charge my fans more than what I think is right.
Right, right. And it's, we have like the buzzwords of we're living in a creator's economy.
Yes.
Right? But it's just that. It's a buzzword, right? It's the same people that are running the entire economy. It's not the creators. And so those creators that you had mentioned that have stepped up to really say, you know what, no, we're going to make sure that the fans are taken care of. It's nice to see because they realize that without the musicians, without the fans, there's no industry.
Exactly, exactly. And that story about fan engagement, that story about uh, valuing your fans as much as you value your work. The fans are part of that work because we were talking a little bit about music that you create and that nobody really likes. Is that creation? Is that an authentic creation, or is that something that's just something personal? Or how do you share it with the audience, and what audience do you find? These people are already fans. These
Right.
people are already your audience.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you encourage a greater connection? And talk a little bit of, we talk a little bit about blockchain as being a tool to make that connection more realistic and more beneficial for both parties.
Mm-hmm.
When we're talking about the experiences that are going to be created through VNYLab with the performers and their fans, you've mentioned songwriting, contributing to the songwriting process, contributing to the creation of the music. Are there other ways that the creators can connect with their fans in through that technology, through your platform?
Oh yeah, so we have a pretty big roadmap of different ways that artists are going to be able to connect with fans. We envision a marketplace where artists are able to do all of their fan engagement activities from releasing new content to releasing their digital downloads. But in regard to the blockchain piece of it, that is just a small piece that is going to track who has participated in the creation of what songs.
So that's the great way of record keeping
Yeah.
and formulating, all, putting in formal fashion all the people who are involved with that a particular song or particular event or a
Yeah.
particular item. I think that's a great way of doing the accounting and doing it in a straightforward and transparent manner.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, and it lets it live on, right?
Yeah,
Because it's immutable. So it's running off of not just a centralized device that's managing it. So if something were to happen, that those stakes still exist afterwards.
interesting. Now, when you are building a business like you have, and you've been working behind the scenes for just about 3 years now to get this up and running. You're about to do some big things here in 2024. We're days away from some big launches and some big news for you. How do you get people interested in your story? What are the stories that you're telling people when you go out to, uh, like you were up in New York yesterday and you were meeting with musicians and producers? What are the stories you're telling them? What are the stories you're telling potential fan customers? What are the stories that you're telling potential music industry people or investors?
Mm,
How are you telling them the story of Vinyl Lab in a way that, I don't have anything for you yet, but this is what I'm doing?
right. It's a lot of personal stories, actually. It's a lot of getting people that are going to believe in you and the team. Um, yes, some of them will be around how we got to the product that we're going to be offering. And those stories still stem from our time in the music industry and what we've seen with that and what we've seen with fan engagement. The whole concept of the company came from a story that Nikki had told me. We'd gotten told no for probably the 20th time
Okay.
on whether our program that we had proposed would work or not. And we were sitting in a cafe, and she starts telling me a story about when she used to get with 100 people in a room, and they'd be paying to see her concert, and she would start just playing on a piano. And she's a fantastic songwriter, a fantastic pianist, and she would start calling people out in the crowd of like, "Hey, where should I go next with this song? What should I be singing about?" And the whole audience would start to participate in this. And by the end of it, they'd have a song. And she goes, "Man, I really wish that I could let them own these songs." And that's when the light bulb went off of like,
Sure.
wait, why don't we talk about how we connect them in songwriting? And at that point is when we really started the company.
That's
So it was all through a story.
that's a great origin story.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's also there's an element of improvisation in there,
Hmm.
as far as there's Nikki on stage playing the piano and seeking input from her audience.
Yeah.
That's a great way to describe it as far as what this will ultimately be, is this way for the fans to be part of the process.
Right. Right. And it's something that she had been doing for years. Right. It's just there wasn't the infrastructure to do it in the way that we're going to do it now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you are telling that, who does that story resonate the most with? Is it with the musicians or is it with the fans?
So both. I
Okay.
think both. And now I will say it resonates with the musicians more at first, and but as these fans hear about it and then they see it happen kind of out in the wild,
Yeah.
then it starts to click with them, and they go, oh, I see what you're doing here, and then they really get excited about it. And we have some interesting ways that we're gonna be launching this year uh, to kind of show the market how these collaborations can happen.
That's I think that's one of the most exciting things. And I've dealt with companies in the sports industry as far as programs for fan engagement for over 20 years now. And I've dealt with other entertainment properties that are trying to engage with fans in specific markets. And this is a great idea in my view. It's one of those things that it answers a lot of questions. It answers a lot of challenges that I've seen out there over the last 20 some years where people are saying, I really need to get in front of people, but how do I get them to come to me?
Hmm.
So you're kind of driving traffic both ways. You're driving the fans to come, but you're also driving the entertainers to come.
Yeah.
So it's a great back and forth, if you will.
One, I think that songwriting is telling a story, right? And Nikki and I write together, and we were writing one last week while I was in Nashville with her. And a lot of the conversation comes through like, okay, what's the concept for the song? We start writing it, and we'll talk back and forth like, okay, that's very specified to your experience as the writer. How do you make it so it's generalized and can apply to more people and more people's situations, right? So what better way to do that than with a group of your biggest fans to tell them, hey, come tell your story with me, right? Like, sure, I have a guiding light on an experience that caused me to write this song, but I don't want it to just be for me.
What do you think is the most impressive way or something that has resonated in your background when you're writing a song or performing a song? What are some of the things that you look for to connect with an audience? What are some of the things that really like a personal experience and
Yeah.
telling it well, or something that a shared experience?
So I tell a lot of personal experiences through songwriting, but again, I do it in a generalized way
Okay.
that people can relate to. And with the type of music that I've toured with, a lot of it is just the subjects that people sometimes feel like they're the only ones,
Okay.
right? And I'm the only person that feels this way, and it's typically the negative emotions we have, and we can get wrapped up and we can feel isolated. And it's been rewarding to write songs where you can see people feel less alone at the end of them.
Okay. I like that. I like that. Yeah, because again, it's one of those storytelling techniques that people take for granted, if you will.
Right.
And I think that that's a very powerful medium. I've spoken to people who are in uh, improv coaches, and I've spoken to people who are uh, performing arts groups,
Yeah.
and there has to be some element of personality in that the personal experience or something that
Yeah.
touches in any type of storytelling.
Yeah, it has to be real. It has to be authentic.
Yeah.
Right? Even if the story that's being told is made up, the feeling and sentiment behind it has to be authentic and draw from something. Um, we live in a world where we're just now getting past the point of emotions make you weak,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
songs are a wonderful way that you can pour your heart out there and make people realize like it doesn't make you weak, it just makes you different. Like we always what is it that you say, right?
Whatever doesn't kill me makes me funnier.
Exactly, right? So you get through those hard times and you draw something positive out of them. It doesn't make you a weaker person.
It's true. It's very true. And I think we're seeing a lot more openness to that,
Yeah.
and especially after our experiences over the last few years. Uh, when when you talk about that authenticity, and I know I've seen that in you. That's one of the reasons why
Thank
we're
you.
still together. There's an authentic nature to you, and the stories that you share with me, I feel part of that. I
Yeah.
feel I relate to that. Taking it to a professional level, here you are. You're building a business. You're building. We talked before this interview conversation. We talked about know, like, trust.
Hmm.
So I have gotten to know you through the stories that we've shared. You've gotten to know me. And I like you because we have very similar points of view on a lot of different things. We don't know all our points of view in our conversation,
Yeah.
but there's enough commonality there that I genuinely like you. And I trust you because you're someone who I've had very pleasant dealings with, both through conversations and just general interactions. So there is that know, like, trust because to me, you're authentic. But how do you use storytelling to project that authenticity to a total stranger who may be a potential customer or a client or maybe a potential investor
Hmm.
in your business, how do you break the ice, if you will, in a conversation when you're, for want of a better term, selling your business?
Poorly. Terrible icebreaker, to be honest with you. So,
Okay.
yeah.
How do you mean?
Yeah, I
Because
think
I didn't think so when we first met.
well, then you give me more credit than I should, because if you remember when I first met you, I was looking at the room and you seemed very inviting as a person, and I really didn't want to talk to anybody else at the party. So I was like, this guy looks like a nice guy. I'm going to go talk to him, right? Um,
And we've talked about that because you have mentioned to me that you will go to a networking event and kind of lock in on one person.
yeah,
And that's the concentration that you make.
right.
You focus on the one person in the group. So, and you told me that much longer after we first met.
Yeah, yeah.
But I appreciate that more than you know. So,
Yeah, it's great. Icebreakers are not my specialty by any means. And I think that as far as getting someone through like the know, like, trust process, it's just going to depend on who the two people interacting are, right? I am always willing to share my vulnerabilities with people. I think that that's helped me because we all have them.
yes.
But when we go to those events, we sit out there and we do your stereotypical icebreakers, like we're, wearing a shield of armor or something like
Yes.
that. And I just don't buy it because we're all vulnerable.
Yeah.
So
And they
that's,
like some of these events, the whole idea is to project this invulnerability, this superpower.
yeah.
I'm Superman, and that's why you need to meet me.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's ridiculous, to be honest with you. Hi, my name's John. I'm super flawed, but if you'll give me some time to listen, then
I'll move on.
I'll tell you my story,
Yeah.
right? That's how it is. But we all have those, and I think that when we share our vulnerabilities with others, that's when we start to build an actual relationship, right? You and I never sat there and traded success stories. As a matter of fact, I'll bet if you asked either you or I to tell 3 success stories for the other person, we probably couldn't, but we could probably tell 3 failure or vulnerable stories.
I think that's a big part of being an entrepreneur too,
Yeah.
is because if you haven't had some failures,
Oh, yeah.
you probably aren't doing it right. Those missed opportunities or something that we did that didn't work out.
Mm-hmm.
Those are what build our business savvy. And
Yeah.
people who can relate to that, instead of I've had an unparalleled path of success where, everything I've touched turns to gold.
Yeah.
That's when you start thinking about, or at least I do, I'm thinking, okay, where is this going to fall? I'm going to be the one that's going to fall apart with.
Right. Well, we can learn from other people's failures as well, right? My first business, I went on my own. It failed, and at that point, I learned a lot of valuable lessons. First, I was trying to do it myself, and that was a mistake because it makes pivoting very difficult. And when the technology we were using became obsolete, I couldn't pivot in time to really still keep competing. So after that, I went and tried to help other people achieve their dreams, and the way I would pick different companies and different startups I would work with was by a skill that a specific person had and say, hey, if you mentor me in this skill, like I'll help you with whatever you might need that falls within my skill set.
Okay.
And so I kind of went around before going at it again.
Yeah.
And collected some of the skills that I realized that I hadn't obtained before starting out on my own in 2015. So I learned from a lot of people's failures through mentorship and them telling me stories about what not to do.
Sure.
Right. And those are the ones that I want to hear. I want you to tell me, what should I not do? Don't tell me what to do, because that doesn't matter to me. What should I not do?
That's interesting that you use the word stories in that too, because it's those stories that help us learn far more than the success stories help us learn, I think.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I when someone's telling you a success story, it doesn't necessarily mean that the way that they did it would work again today.
Right. And it's not a flawless form and follow.
Right.
There's always going to be a variation in it.
Right. But telling someone what not to do is pretty concrete.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Like,
because you have an example. This is
right.
what happened. This is what I did. It went wrong. This is what happened.
Yeah, like the boat's going to sink every time you put a hole in it. Don't put a hole in the boat. It's easy, right? But if you take a boat with no hole in it and then you sail it across the Atlantic and get lucky, okay, well,
You got lucky.
You got lucky. I'd rather know not to put a hole in the boat.
Sure. I think that's an interesting point that you make, because we learn from other people's mishaps. We learn from our own mishaps, and I think again, whatever doesn't kill me makes me funnier in the future telling of the story. You know, we can look back on it and laugh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of value in the stories of the mishaps, the failures, the missteps. Well, I often use the example of William Shatner's advice to always say yes to everything. And he said, you never learn if you say no to everything. You know, so if you say yes, you might have a dud. You might have a Kingdom of the Spiders.
Right.
But then you also open yourself up to T.J. Hooker, or you open yourself up to Boston Legal. You might have another misfire somewhere along the way, but you still have better chance of success because you're open to the opportunity.
Absolutely. I think that's huge in team building too, right? Because a lot of people that I've met, they have a vision and they go with the vision and they're sure that they're right. And so they start adding team members, and the team members try to add their portion of the vision, and they say no, like, this is the way we're doing it. This is the way we're doing it. And I just don't agree with that. As you add people to help you achieve your goal, you should try saying yes every once in a while, because A, you may not know everything. B, you probably don't know everything. And C, you don't know everything. So,
and it's those stories of those individuals' experiences with, you know, oh, I was at this concert the other night and I saw this, or I was at the ball game the other night and I saw this, or I was at a networking event the other night and I met this person and they told me this.
mm-hmm.
Those stories are what you build the business around, how you build it up to something good, if not great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, again, it's everybody's personal stories on the team that lends credence to the team effort.
Right, exactly. And I think when you have a mission that's bigger than yourself, and you're trying to actually do something positive, like a net positive for an industry, then it's less personal too. So you can bring team members on that have the same vision and same mission, and it's easier to just go, hey, yeah, you're better in this subject, so you do whatever you think is right, and we'll just go with it.
And that mission that people buy into, I want to kind of circle back to this and kind of end our conversation on this. The mission of VNYLab, as you see it, is
that we're reinventing the way that recording artists and fans connect and create and monetize music. That
pure and simple.
Yep.
And that's a great, pure mission.
Mm-hmm.
And it can benefit both parties.
Absolutely. We have a big team now, and they're awesome. And I'd say 90% of them are creators themselves. So we stay mission focused, and even when for the past few years people have told us we were crazy, we managed to come out on the other side. So we're excited for 2024.
That's exciting for you and exciting for all of us. I'm very glad that we have been able to connect over the last 2 years and get together on this. And I'm looking forward to all the great things that are going to happen in 2024. There's some great stories coming out of this.
There will be.
And we will do a follow-up on that, I promise you.
Okay, that sounds good.
Thank you, Jon, for sharing some of this VNYLab development story and your experiences. And I'd love to have you on again to talk about some of your music industry experiences, your performing experience. I think there's another bunch of stories in there that I think people would get a big kick out of.
Yeah, there's a bunch of stories in there. We'll just have to cut 40% of them.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds like a plan.
Thanks for having me, Jim.
Thank you, Jon. And thank you for watching and listening. I look forward to seeing you all again here very, very soon.